Welcome to Hopeful Hearts podcast. This is Tamara Lexo, and I am here with founder of Hopeful Hearts, Shannon Carr. Hi, Shannon.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Tamara.
How are you today?
I'm
You doing
okay.
good?
I'm
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, it's
it's
been a little
hot.
frustrating. It's very hot, melting. Today is actually, I
Melting.
think, the hottest day in
Mm-hmm.
Houston, from
Yeah.
what I hear. It's supposed to feel like
Yeah.
112 or 113
Oh,
as we
yeah. And
speak.
I when I read that we're supposed to be at the midpoint of the heat. Like it's supposed to slowly start getting better from
Hmm.
here, but I'm just afraid to hold on to that kind of hope right now.
It's gonna be Christmas
I,
and 90 degrees
right,
or something.
I feel like right now we're like in the melting point where we're just gonna melt. There's no way
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
But anyway, I act this way every summer since I moved to Houston, and that was like 26 years ago. I act like I'm shocked at how hot
Of
it
how
is. Like,
hot. Yeah.
oh my God, it's so hot. Where did this
Yeah.
come from? Like it's never happened before, but it's been
I've never lived
especially
anywhere
hot.
else and I still act like that. So,
Yeah, it's been especially hot. So, but
hmm.
we have a great topic today. We are going to talk about some things in your book,
Yeah.
your latest book, and you can hold that up there for our viewers.
Hmm.
And the book is called Reclaimed: Overcome Trauma and Gain Healthy Control of Your
Control of
Life.
your life.
Not unhealthy. We want you to gain
Yeah.
healthy control of your life. And you can get Shannon's book on
On
Amazon.
Amazon.
It's there. Or if you are local and want to pick one up from us, we have those in stock. So I'd love for you to have a copy of that. It's a good book, but
Yes.
we're going to kind of dive into some of the ideas in that today because really it's like the basis of all we do with Hopeful Hearts Ministry. So when people say, well, what exactly do you do? What do you offer? And you can go to our website, hopefulheartsministry.org, to learn more. But we do one-on-one peer support. We do um, group lessons, classes. We do book studies, Bible studies. We can come to your place of business. We can work with your team on doing some recovery work with your team so that everyone learns to set healthy boundaries. We have a retreat coming up in November. You can sign up for that retreat online at our website. But all of those things kind of boil
Hmm.
down to these things that you wrote about in
Right.
your book
Yeah.
about um, overcoming trauma from your life,
Hmm.
overcoming
Right.
abuse, overcoming traumatic events that have happened to you that have left you wounded. And
Hmm.
we want to help you have the tools that you need to overcome those things and how to
Hmm.
gain uh, a healthy control of your life. So,
Yeah.
why don't you kick us
Um,
off, Shannon?
yeah, I just want to first be transparent. I mean, we always want to be transparent. We were just
Mm-hmm.
laughing as, Tamara and I are updating everything now that we're together and a team and
Mm-hmm.
we're rebranding and kind of getting our pictures done. That was a lot of fun. We did
Yeah.
that last week. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
to Kristen McCord for doing that with Houston
Yes, with Houston Studios.
Studios. Um, and we were just discussing, a lot of this. And um, one thing that I do love about this podcast and doing this with you, Tamara, and this is kind of what we were talking about is, I mean, we're not scripted. And maybe
Mm-mm.
some people might listen to us and think they need to be scripted, like they need to follow something. But
No.
I like the fact that we literally play it off of each other, right? Like
Yeah,
this is what we feel
we do.
called to talk about, but
Mm-hmm.
we don't know how we're feeling. We don't know,
Right.
and like what's going to come forth. And with
Mm-hmm.
full disclosure, but right before we started this podcast, like I was completely triggered by a email. And when I say triggered, when I say that, I think a lot of people think, oh, sexually or something, just because of what my main
Right.
abuse was. And no,
Mhm.
like I have many things that I have
Right.
lived through and gone through and overcome,
You have
and
bags upon bags upon
a
bags.
baggage, man. I am one of those, you know what I am? I'm a freight carrier. I am the
Right.
freaking freight carrier that crosses
Right.
the ship channel with
Mhm.
where it's like Legos. So it's
Yeah.
not, it's just, and each one of those little what are they called? Those containers, those
Yeah.
they're
The
called
shipping
something.
containers.
Shipping containers has like how many bags of luggage in them?
Right.
And
Right.
I'm the whole freaking
Uh-huh.
ship with all of the
Like the one,
containers with
then it has
all
the
the
horn.
bags.
It's like, wah,
That's right.
wah.
That is right. And so that is
Yeah.
why that Russ is a saint for having, married me. I'm just kidding. So I'm not kidding, but I am kidding. But no, so I got triggered because first of all, it was an email from a male, and
Mhm.
and to any men that hopefully listen to this podcast, because we help both male and female survivors.
Yes.
It was just, and this was a business email, strictly
Mhm.
business, right? The
Right.
man had every right to say whatever and it was just very forceful though, and it was almost
Mhm.
an underlying threat.
Mhm.
And it triggered me because I do have this, and thankfully it has gotten a lot better, but I have a lot
Mhm.
of survivors that, I've worked with that might come back every now and then or text something or ask for prayer. And this has
Mhm.
been one of their main questions is, I thought I got over that. Why is this bothering
Yeah.
me? Or why is this popping back up? Or I thought,
Mhm.
and that's why Tamara and I consistently talk about the fact that this is an ongoing journey.
Yes.
It's an
Yes.
ongoing healing journey. And
Mhm.
I got triggered, I pushed that little button for me, and suddenly, as I talk about in this book, and I won't go through the whole book, we'll just kind of touch on the different chapters and what we deal with, and whatever comes up from that comes up from that. But
Mhm.
that one of my lies raised its ugly head. It was like touching that little rattlesnake, that's all coiled and
Mhm.
warm and under the rock, but then somebody
Mhm.
poked it and it was like, what? And
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
kind of what happened. And I, as she and I were preparing for this podcast, the lie that for me came out with that is, you're not good. Like
Yeah.
you're not just not good enough, because it didn't hit to that particular lie.
Yeah.
That was, but it just hit to you're not good at what you do. You're just not good.
Mhm.
Um,
You
just
suck.
made me, yeah, yeah. It
Mhm.
just made me feel like, oh my gosh. But then on the other hand, it then triggered that like fight, flight,
Mhm.
freeze response of,
Mhm.
oh, what, and so now, which I typically kind of freeze, and I think that's then what upsets me is then my initial response was to be like, uh, I'm just not even going to answer. Like, I don't even know
Right.
what to do with that. Like, I'm going to
Mhm.
ignore it. I don't know, because I don't know how, you know what I mean? I'm not
Right.
smart
Yeah.
enough to respond,
Right.
or I'm not good enough to give the right answer, or
Mhm.
I'm not strong enough to take what the follow up might be, or, whatever.
But
When
the
in all
reality
reality,
is, you
please speak your
no, like,
reality.
so the
My
reality
reality.
is you are a brilliant
Yeah.
woman, and
Oh, thank you.
you're a great businesswoman, and you are excellent at what you do, and you have excellent interpersonal skills. So I know that you will be able to respond to that in a
Hmm.
professional way, but you just have to take a minute,
Hmm.
like you just got to breathe about it. And I think it's funny that, we kind of joke about still carrying the baggage and all. And sometimes people will say, well, why do I even want to do the work? Because
Hmm.
if I'm never going to be over this,
Hmm.
then what's the point? And you go, well, because you can be over it. You know, there are some lies that I used to believe that I don't believe at all anymore and don't trigger me at all.
Yeah.
But there's some that I still have a little more work to do.
You know, it's just now hit me the exact thing that has been triggered just as we're talking. I mean, because it's just really hit me what he got me with is he stated a fact that he felt like, and it is his fact, right? He's comparing kind of apples to oranges on something. And in my point of view, I think the job I'm doing and the job or whatever I'm representing is doing a great job. Like I was pleased. So much so that when I found, I was like, wow, that's fantastic.
You're like, wow,
so for
there's
me,
great results happening here.
That's a great result for him because he's comparing something to something else that literally is like comparing apples to oranges. It's not the same thing. He's expecting a different response or a different outcome, right?
But you never promised that outcome.
Right. But what triggered that for me is like that I feel like he thinks that I'm lying or that I'm not, you know what I mean? And I think that is one of my biggest things that I do, that it's like, I'm not lying. I need people, I need you to believe me. I'm not lying. And I think from a little girl, from everything, it was always like, I felt like I had to, believe me, I'm not
I didn't
lying.
make this up.
I didn't make this up. And I am worthy. I am good for my word. And I am, because so much was taken from me in that regard, you know, like I want to cry just thinking about it and just knowing that that's what that touched on. And you're right. I do need to sit back and give that to God and just go, okay, like I need to take that out of it. Right. And just respond. I just need to let that go and respect the fact that, I mean, I absolutely don't blame him for feeling or seeing, because he's looking at very, very straightforward things. And I'm not. I'm now bringing in my own truckload, my own whole thing of baggage with it, and he doesn't need that clearly. But anyway, I'm glad. See, this is why we do this.
Right. This is why we do it. Right. Everybody just witnessed. This is what we do. You give us a call and we help walk you through. This is also what we do for businesses. When people say, well, how do you bring this in to a business, and you know how we can help your team communicate better with each other,
right,
when you take your baggage out of the equation,
right,
how to do that. So anyway,
right, and working with coworkers,
right,
you know, that whole setup, as much as you want to think that your personal life does not come into your business life, it does.
It does.
And then if you're wondering why, you know, why am I not getting the success that I know that I'm good enough for, you know, sometimes we have to sit back and you know, first of all, learn how to allow that pride, you know, put that pride aside. And then to see, I realized that like just me, like that triggered a response that I would have never thought that it went back to that point of my life. Right. And it's just a quick walking through and going, okay,
exactly.
You know, what's that touch point for you?
Right.
Yeah. So let me explain for anybody that doesn't know about Reclaimed. This was written by me after I got divorced, before I got remarried. So it's under my maiden name, McGraw, Shannon McGraw. I do have a author page on Amazon. So it's Shannon Dietz McGraw Carr, all the names that I've had. But this book is outlining essentially kind of what I have followed, what I believe God is giving me to use as I've worked with survivors and for myself. But it came from Ephesians 5:6 through 6 through 20. And I know that we talk about this in the very first episode that we do with this podcast, but I'm going to go ahead. I just want to read this again because this is such a great thing for those of us that are survivors. But it says, let no one deceive you with empty arguments. For because of these things, the wrath of God is coming upon the disobedient. So do not be associated with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. for light produces every kind of goodness and righteousness and truth. Try to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the fruitless works of darkness. Rather, expose them. For it is shameful even to mention the things done by them in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible. For everything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. Watch carefully then how you live, not as foolish persons, but as wise, making the most of the opportunity, because these days are evil. Therefore, do not continue in ignorance, but try to understand what is the will of the Lord. And do not get drunk on wine, in which lies debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit, addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and playing to the Lord in your hearts, giving thanks always and for everything in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ to God the Father. And what I love is that, I love the part where it says expose what's been done in the darkness, rather expose them. Take no part in the fruitless works of the darkness, rather expose them. And just now, Tamara and I gave you guys an example of just a small way of not taking part, me not allowing the enemy to just just burden me with this thought of, he doesn't believe you, you're not good, you're not really, you're not trustworthy, you're, whatever, all these things that I was feeling inside. And it literally, I feel lighter now. I honest to God feel lighter now that we worked through this live. But I don't feel as oppressed or dark inside. It literally is a feeling of a heaviness inside.
Once you can find the root to a weed, you can pull it out of the ground, and then you don't have to look at it anymore. You don't have to deal with it in that way.
Right.
So that's what we did. We just went and found the root. And so
thank you, Tamara. You did good work. So like chapter 1, what is your what is your truth and what are your facts? And so it goes off of Ephesians 5:6, let no one deceive you with empty arguments. And it's just, I give examples of those that I have worked with in the past. And we go through just giving, trying to help everyone come up with the fact of, when we have been overcome by so much, sometimes if we have not talked through, like I just did, if we've not talked through all the things that make us feel, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, if we're listening to all those lies, we forget our actual facts. One big fact is that God makes no mistakes, and God made each of us in his likeness and goodness, and that he loves us unconditionally. That is a fact. We cannot get rid of that. The enemy cannot make that go away. Excuse me. And I think that's what's so good is to then, and sit down. And I always have a reflection at the end. And so I really do, if you're just now going through the healing process, and if you don't want to work with Tamara and I through this, I do encourage you to work through this book, maybe with a therapist. Hold on.
It's important work to do, whether it's with us or with somebody else.
Right. And so, I encourage you to write down different memories, and what are your feelings from those memories, things like that. So it is, you could do as much with this book as you want, or as little as you want. You could just read through it. But chapter 2, it's time to live. I go into, again, going through those lies. So the first one I focus on, just what is that first memory that comes to mind, especially if you've never really gone through any kind of healing. There's always going to be that one main thing that comes to mind, and let's work through that. That's another thing I want to say. And I know, Tamara, you probably have something to say about this too. This isn't about taking that whole ship container and trying to unload everything at one time.
Oh yeah.
That's not healthy. It's not going to help you. And I
No.
absolutely believe that God gives us that moment for when certain
Mm-hmm.
things are to be revealed,
Mm-hmm.
from within, from you, like, and for you to, that where you're able to work through it.
Mm-hmm.
So, for
Yeah.
instance, my memories of what my grandfather had done to me didn't fully resurface until I was writing my second book, Redeemed. And it was then at that point, and that was still, even though I just knew he had done what he'd done, I just didn't have any of the memories. I didn't discuss it. I
Right.
hadn't worked through it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need to. I was working through other things. But when it all came forward, it was fantastic because then finally I really felt like I understood myself, like all my pieces
Yeah.
came together. But the work was so hard because that was a hard thing to deal with. And had I had that come at any other time before that,
Mm-hmm.
I am not quite sure that I would have been able to really handle it because of
Mm-hmm.
not just myself, but even because of the reactions around me and the
Yes.
people around me.
Yes.
And, you know, because a lot of, there was a lot of hard things where people either didn't want to hear about it, they didn't want to acknowledge it, they didn't want,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I had to be strong enough to simply accept that and know my truth is my truth and I'm going to keep working through it. Right. But had that happened any earlier, that in itself would have devastated me so much. And it would have added to the same trigger I'm dealing with today of nobody
Absolutely.
believes me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not
Yes.
worthy to speak my truth because nobody's going to believe me anyway or hear me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't get anywhere with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like um over the years, and I know we use this analogy a lot of like an onion, and you peel back the layers on it. Um, when I first started any kind of recovery work, um, I had done therapy off and on, through my adulthood. But when I first started going to Celebrate Recovery, and I joined a step study, a 12-step program. Celebrate Recovery, if you don't know, is a faith-based Christian 12-step program. It's written by, I'm just drawing a blank right now.
I'll look for it.
John
You keep
John
talking.
Baker that did Alcoholics Anonymous. He is
Yes.
part of it, but also Rick Warren. Thank you, there, Rick
Mm-hmm.
Warren, from Saddleback. He was at Saddleback out in California. But they took basically like the Alcoholics Anonymous program and made it Christ centered. And so the very first time I started that, it was because I knew I had a problem with emotional eating. I knew I had an unhealthy relationship with food, and I went in thinking, I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna fix me, and I'm gonna lose weight. And
Mm.
I went in and realized, oh, like there are reasons why I have unhealthy relationships with food, and which I should have known going, but it was like didn't put those pieces together. And so I had to start pulling back those layers. And I really only got like a couple layers in where it was like, oh, I had an anger problem. I had a huge anger problem, um, which had been pointed out to me, and several people had said, you might want to work on that. And I was kind of in denial. Like I held on to my anger like it was a power thing, like uh, my rage and the way I
Mm.
could act out, that made me stronger, and it made me like I was a force to be reckoned with. And I didn't want to give that up because it made me feel powerful. And I didn't want to be in a position where I didn't feel powerful anymore. Um, so that was like the first thing that God was like, well, we got to deal with this first. It's like, why are you angry? And so started dealing with that and pulling that. And then it was like, okay, well, now why were you angry in the first place? And well, then it was like, oh, well, there was this abuse that I endured as a small child. And there was horrible sexual things that had happened to me as a high schooler, and my mom's suicide. It's like, oh, I got to deal with the anger and this, and then we start pulling back layers and pulling back layers. But if all of those things had just been put out there once, there would have been too much to sort through. Like, it wouldn't have made sense. It would have been overwhelming. Um, but going through and, pulling back the layers, you can see where this is connected to this, and this is connected to this, and this is connected to this. And each time I would see a connection, it was like, oh, that makes sense. And it made me hungry to discover more and say, well, then why did that reaction happen? So let me go back further and go, okay, well, where did this come from? And then go back further. Well, then why did that happen? It's kind of like reading a mystery novel. It's like you got to figure it out, because at every twist and turn, the story changes. But it's overwhelming if all those facts are just given to you at once. So
no, I know. I agree with you. I had a thought that came, but I was listening, and now I can't. I can't remember it anymore. But that's okay. No, I love it. Well, I'll just keep going. So, chapter 3 goes. You are the key is the name of the chapter. But what I love about this one, and like I said, when I write, I tend to write for myself too, like the things I need to hear myself say.
Right. Absolutely.
But this is, Ephesians 5:10, try to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. And I begin with the sentence, get over it. And I go into this chapter talking about, how does it make you feel if someone says to you, get over it, or, you need to fix that, or trying to fix you, or you're broken, or, all those things. And that's just not truth. That's not truth. And the Lord says in his own word, try. He knows that we're not perfect. We are not perfect. And we're going to have times that we mess up, and we do. I think the whole point is, just like with you first starting with Celebrate Recovery. I mean, that was your first step, right?
Yeah.
That was you trying. And, you went through that. And I mean, I remember I did Beth Moore. My kind of first moment of my healing was doing Beth Moore's Bible study, Breaking Free.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's what led me ultimately to my major kind of reconversion and, meeting God. But then I went back and I did it again, because I realized I didn't get everything from it the first time. And then I let it twice, because, and each time, I let it go. I knew there was other things I could keep doing, but it was just, I think because it was my first one and my first thing, and I didn't know about Celebrate Recovery at the time. And, like, again, just as we started this whole podcast today, is that this is it's a journey. It's going to be a journey, and you're going to keep learning, and you're going to keep different things. And so probably even with you, as much as you got out of doing, your first Celebrate Recovery, you started recognizing, okay, well, this is where my anger comes from. These are the things, you started with the first tools in your toolbox.
Right.
But it probably didn't mean that suddenly it was gone, that you were suddenly like, Tinkerbell, Tamara, like, I'm happiest of all the time.
Well, some people called me that. No, nobody called me that. Yeah, no, I was not. You're right. You did, but it's like, oh, well, you're just going to soften this. It's like God refines us through the fire. That's kind of the promise of his word. It's like when we go through the fire, he takes those impurities out of us, because he wants us to be pure like him. And so we have our edges filed down and
Mm-hmm.
sharpened, and we go through the things we go through, and it makes us a better person if we allow God to
Mm-hmm.
work through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't, then we become a mess. So,
Mm-hmm.
we're just that big old pile of poo, but he can make something beautiful out of it.
Exactly.
Mm.
And, as I was flipping through the pages of this chapter, I landed on, I give quite a few Bible verses throughout each
Mm-hmm.
chapter and things. And I'm only going to read like the first sentence of this because it's what grabbed my attention. But as we are doing that for ourselves, like giving ourselves grace to kind of
Mm-hmm.
keep going through these steps, I think it's so important to allow ourselves or allow us to see that maybe other people are doing that too, right? Or maybe
Yes.
they haven't even, they're not
Yes.
even started. And
Right.
yeah, you can hopefully lovingly be that, you know example, if you will. You can never
Mm-hmm.
make somebody, you can't force a horse
No.
to the water, right? Isn't that the saying?
Right.
You can't.
Yeah. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
But this is it's Romans 14, and I quote 13 through 18, but this is probably just 13. Then let us no longer judge one another, but rather resolve never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother.
Yeah.
And I love that because I mean, I think one of the things that I still struggle with to this day, and I got my little therapy journal I've been writing in, I need to
Mm-hmm.
go back once I'm back from my little trip, is just being frustrated with, I don't feel like I'm being allowed by certain people from my past or that I'm around
Mm-hmm.
to be a new person or improved person or
Mm-hmm.
forgiven, or
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. It's hard for people who knew you when,
mm-hmm,
and then you've had a break from them, and then they see
mm-hmm,
you now. It's hard for them to reconcile the difference in you, and you
mm-hmm,
go, I'm not that person anymore. i'm I am changed. It's
yeah,
I feel like it's easier for the people who are in our everyday life and they see the gradual change. It's kind of like watching a toddler grow. How
mm-hmm,
you don't see it, you don't notice it so much, but if it's your niece or your nephew or grandchild or cousin, whatever, and you're away from them for a few months and you come back and it's like, oh my word, you're so tall. You didn't see all the work in that daily growth, and so it's really hard for people to reconcile,
mm-hmm,
and sometimes want they don't want to believe that we've
mm-hmm,
changed,
mm-hmm,
um, because either we've hurt, like our old self, how we were as our old self, maybe we hurt them, and so they don't know if they can trust us as our new self.
mm-hmm,
Or what I see more often is someone who knows that they need to change,
mm,
someone who knows that they need to make changes in their life. They know that there are very unhealthy things going on, and they see that you are healing, that you are growing, that you have joy and peace in your life, because you and I both know that when you start this journey, that you
mm-hmm.
start to experience joy and peace in a way that you never ever did before. And so
Right.
now you have joy and peace, and they want that, but they don't want
Mm-hmm,
to do the work yet. And so they're bitter at you.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes they
Amen.
will cut you out of their life because they don't want the daily reminder that they're
Mm-hmm,
not doing the work yet.
mm-hmm.
And I say that not as like a prideful thing, like, oh, look at us, we're
Right. Mm-mm.
growing and healing and da da da. It's not that at all. It's like we want to say to people, look what God can do. Like, it's so exciting.
Mm-hmm,
Sometimes I just like I want to shout it in
mm-hmm,
the town center, be like, look what God can do for you. Keep shaking my
mm-hmm.
fists. But I'm like, look what God can
Yeah.
do for you. Look what's
Mm-hmm,
possible if you let him in to those
mm-hmm.
dark places.
Then you
But
just try.
people just
Mm-hmm.
shut it out and miss out
Mm-hmm.
on it.
Oh, I know. So, I mean, with that, the end of that chapter, I just have you reflect on, what is that relationship with God? Because that's
Mhm.
essentially what this chapter goes into is so many things of, can you trust God? Can you trust God to help you come out of this? Can you believe of what he, feels about you? And then throughout the book, I also share different poems that survivors that I've worked with over the years have written. Chapter 4 goes into eliminating the darkness. And this is the chapter that I talk about writing down all your ugly. So this isn't necessarily the lies, it's just the things that maybe we even personally feel about, ourselves, or things that we don't like about ourselves, or that we finally have taken on an understanding of, oh, maybe that's not so good. You know what I mean? And I think it's so fulfilling to be able to do something like that. Just to even acknowledge, okay, look, I mean, yeah, I feel like, I have this about me, but now that I'm acknowledging it, I know that I can improve it. I know that I can do more with it.
And sometimes we take on behaviors as children, or even as adults. If you're in an abusive relationship, we learn to behave in a certain way in order to protect ourselves. And then when we're out of that situation, we're no longer living with an abuser, no longer with that grandfather, you're no longer with that friend or whatever. We forget that we don't have to have that behavior anymore. And so we kind of have to unlearn some things. So
yeah,
that's an important part of it too.
And, and I feel like that it's very important for us to, and I know that we always mention it. It's not, healing journey is not being able to just put everything on that traumatic situation, or on the person that caused it, or on, yes, that is the majority. However, it's not all of it. We do have to acknowledge the choices that we have made, or the decisions that we have made, to allow ourselves to be the people that, that we are. And if we long to be more or better or different, then that means we have to acknowledge some of the things that are ugly, aren't good. Chapter 5 goes, it's Awake My Soul. That was going to be the title of this book, by the way, at one point, and then I changed it. For the longest time, I had it as Awake My Soul. But now that you've exposed your ugly and written down your empty arguments, it's time to stop that blame game. So it's like I do both sides of the coin. I mean, we should have all over ourselves, right? And that's essentially what this chapter is talking about, and how we could have, if I could have, would have, should have. That in itself also can get you so stuck and so, caught up in a point where you'll stay so stagnant, you'll never be able to go forward. Well, if I could have, or if they would have, I should have, it goes both ways. You should have, could have, would have, they should have, could have, would have. It's got to stop. It stops today, right now. Like, you need to just do what's going on today.
Yes.
Today.
I know I've said it on here before. Excuse me. But having regrets like that and holding on to resentments from your past, and I think both of those kind of go together. Whether you resent people for what they've done to you in the past, or you regret choices that you made, and when you hold on to those things, it's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. That's what shoulding does to ourselves. When we go, I should have done this. Well, why are you shaming yourself now? Like, shaming yourself now is not going to fix what you did in the past. We have to learn to forgive ourselves and move forward. It's like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better.
Do better.
She probably said it much better than that. But when you know better, you do better. I don't know how you say
That's
that any better.
that. No, I think that's how she said. I mean, it's so
Yeah. When you
simple
know
of
better,
a
you do
comment, but
better.
it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
hurt people, healed
right.
people, healed people. I
Hmm.
mean, you just at any point
Right.
you
And
can do better and be better.
it doesn't mean that you just let everything go and you don't ever,
Hmm.
like we need to make amends for things if we've hurt people in the past. That is an
Hmm.
important part of the healing process is, if at all possible, going to that person and saying, I did this to you and this was wrong. Um,
Hmm.
I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Um, that's not always possible.
Hmm.
People die or they move on and maybe they don't want anything to do with you again, or, you know, um, there's lots of
And
reasons why
that's
you can't go
okay
and make it
too.
and make amends, but it's okay. And
Hmm.
there are things that you can do even in those situations,
Hmm.
to allow your heart to heal from there.
Hmm.
Um, or vice versa. If you need, like, if someone really hurt you and they're gone, so you're never going to be able to confront them and say, you did this to me and it hurt me. There are things that Shannon and I can walk you through,
Hmm.
exercises that you can do to allow your heart to open up and receive healing from that as
Hmm.
well. It's never, your story is never a lost cause.
Mm. Mm.
It's never,
I love that.
until the day that you are in the ground, your story is not over. So,
Hmm.
um, there's always healing work to be done and there's always joy to be found. And that's what we want to do, is help you
Hmm.
with
Right.
that stuff. So,
I'm just going to quickly go on. I know that
yeah,
we're probably close
please.
to our time, but
No, we're
chapter
good.
6, claim your inner wisdom. I'll tell y'all, this is, as
Mhm.
writing the chapter, I think I even explained why it was so hard for me. This process for me was difficult because it's accepting that you really are forgiven, just what,
Yes.
Tamara was saying, and that
Hmm.
you have a right. That's one of my lies, that I don't have a right, right? So, but you have a
Hmm.
right to claim God's blessing. You have a right
Yeah.
to be blessed by God. And I on the page 72, if anybody's looking at their book, I say God doesn't look at just your potential. When God looks
Hmm.
at you, he sees who he knows you are, what you can do and what you will do once you decide to be on his team. Remember, Jesus never healed anyone who didn't first admit to being sick. And there's a difference in admitting and taking on the blame. The enemy is clever, and before we realize it, we've either taken on the responsibility of the suffering or put it on somebody else. And
Hmm.
the reflection, this is what was so hard for me. I'll never forget. I think I had a therapist ask me this, or maybe it was even one of my spiritual advisors one time that asked me this. The first question on my reflection of that chapter is, what do you want?
Hmm.
And I remember sitting in that and thinking, I don't know if I've ever thought about, like,
Hmm.
what what do I want? And I don't mean
Yeah.
like, oh, a kid's dream. I want to be married and have kids and blah blah
Right.
blah. I mean, no, literally, like right now, what do you want? You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
peace of heart, a friend,
Hmm.
whatever. And that I have a right to say, Lord, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And that he wants to give it to you,
Hmm. He
you
does.
know?
He does. Uh, there are so many blessings that he has in store for us that go wasted because we don't ask for them. He wants to bless us with all the fruits of the spirit. He wants us to have the peace, the joy, the patience, the kindness, goodness, self-control, understanding. I lost count. All those. Peace, joy, love, patience, yeah, all those.
Sing the song.
Right? I know, like
Mhm.
blanking out, but he wants all of that for us. He wants us to live a life that has the wisdom and the joy and the peace comes only from him.
Mhm.
but we don't ask for it. That's
Amen.
big to say, what do I
Yeah.
want? What do I want?
What do I want? And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's something that, even now, I think that I could, I think every now and then we need to take our journal and reflect on that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're feeling in one of your stagnant moments or your little bumps or something, what do I
Mm-hmm.
want? And then really working through that and taking it to God and putting it in his
Mm-hmm.
hand and knowing, okay, yeah, it might be decades before I get it because it
Right?
took me a few decades to get it, but
Yeah.
to get something I really wanted, not all of it, I just mean one particular thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, he does want to bless you. He wants to bless you. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you might have, like we said, you may have to pull back a lot of those onion layers
Mm-hmm.
before you get there, but there's blessing in that
Mm-hmm.
work too. In the
Yeah.
pulling back, you're going to find things that you didn't even know you wanted or needed. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to find those in the process.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Chapter 7 goes on with "You've got this," and I just talk about rejoicing in that fact of
mm-hmm.
God does want to bless you and that you are strong enough. And I'll just say a little part. It says, when you recognize God's will as the most joyful and fulfilling path you can take, your life can be fully authentic. Granted, as I've stated earlier, no one is perfect, but God still loves us unconditionally in all our imperfections. If it were up to God, it would be easy to recognize his plan, to receive it, and to follow it. But God wants us to want to follow him. He doesn't want us to love him or follow him because he makes us do so. Would you? Would you want your spouse to love you only because you said they had to? Would you want your friends to be your friends because you made them? Absolutely not. So I go into learning how to be grateful, thankful, recognizing, the positive
Mm-hmm.
aspects. And there's a prayer that I offer at the end of that chapter that I'll close this with today when it's time. It's
Mm-hmm.
only a 10 chapter book, so we only have a few more chapters, but I love this prayer. It's by Thomas Merton. It's just a great little prayer that um back in the day, many years ago, I started there's a group out there called Returning Catholics Returning Home, and it's a program at the church that welcomes those that were brought up Catholic, maybe even didn't go through all their sacraments, but they
Mm-hmm.
were brought up in the Catholic home and then they come home, and
Right.
this was a prayer that we would do with them that meeting, but it's a great humbling prayer. um and then chapter 8, stand firm. And this is based off of that. This is the one I cringe at sometimes, but I always talk about, I know Tamara giggles because she already knows what I'm about to say. I love Jesus, but also, drink a little. It's Ephesians 5:18, do not get drunk on wine, which lies debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And my first sentence is, I love wine. I appreciate its aroma, the boldness of the grape, the way varietals of
Mm-hmm.
wine can make the taste of chocolate or a good steak burst with new delicious flavors.
Mm-hmm.
I go in to the fact of what that means, right? What does that
Mm-hmm.
sentence mean to us? And I believe in many ways we can take aspects, whether it's as it's clearly stating in the Bible, do not get drunk on wine, but it's
Mm-hmm.
saying do not everything, right? Don't overeat, don't over
Mm-hmm.
complain, don't, whatever. We can allow the bad part of our life to force us into, um, debauchery, to force us
Mm-hmm.
into replacing what God wants to fill our heart with something else.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're
Yeah.
doing that, that is not good, you know? And so I do go into this chapter saying how it is important for us to look at these, and there have been moments in my life where, um, full disclosure always, as y'all know me,
Mm-hmm.
that I probably did use drinking as a way
Mm-hmm.
of overcompensating or or just
Yeah.
dealing with the day. And then I would recognize it and I would take a step back and be like, I don't,
Mm-hmm.
that's not who I am. And I'm not
Right.
dependent on this and I don't need it. And, back away. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
definitely going off the deep end here, and that's not
Yeah.
my intention, and that's not what I want for myself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, so it's very important to be able for us to be truthful to ourselves
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
regard.
We did a
So,
podcast, one of our early ones was on numbing your pain, and we talked about different things that we have used over the years, or things that people do that really that we put in lieu of God. When we need to be reaching out to God, we need to be calling out to Him. And I have used wine many times in lieu of God. I've used food in lieu of God. I have used Netflix in lieu of God. I have, but
exercise.
exercise. I've
Yeah.
never done that, but some people have. And
I have. I mean, back in the day, I mean, yeah,
yeah.
I can get up for a 4 a.m. boot camp, but could I get
Oh
up
yeah.
for a 4 a.m.
Right.
adoration hour?
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah, that is true. Um, look at that. I used exercise in lieu of God. No, but
Oh.
we do those things, and those things aren't always bad. I mean, exercise is great for you.
Mhm.
Sleep
Absolutely.
is great for you, but when you're doing those things instead of spending time with God, instead of asking God to come and join you in this situation to bring you peace and healing, you're going to end up empty.
Mm.
We all have, God designed us. It's in our DNA. He designed us to be in a relationship with Him, and He designed us to praise Him. So if we aren't in a relationship with Him and we aren't praising Him, we are going to draw something else to try to fill up that need
Mhm.
in us. So we are going to be craving relationships with people, like in an unhealthy way. We're going to be craving a relationship with somebody who can fix us, who can heal us. It's not, because we're designed to be in relationship with other people too. I don't want it to come across like, oh, you need God and no one else. He has designed us to be in community with other people. But if we don't have a relationship with Him, then we are going to be seeking out people who will fix us and heal us. And if we are not worshiping Him, we are going to be seeking other things or other people to worship. And that's just how it is. I mean, those are just
Mhm.
them's the facts. So
Them's the facts.
them's
Yep.
the facts. So it's better once we realize that and do that. That's
Mhm.
that's where we fall short all the time. But
Yeah. Well, and on to chapter 9. This is
mhm,
probably one of my favorites, and I just recently did this the other day. This very example that I gave in here, but chapter 9 is enjoying life. Address one
mhm,
another in psalms and hymns, and sing praises, and
mhm,
just enjoying life. And we need to learn to celebrate even the little things. We need to learn to celebrate, if it's been hard for us, I don't know, to get up out of bed and to go,
mhm.
like I think about my good friend that lost her husband way too young in life. And, we kind of it was discussing it, like celebrating these small steps, that she got out of bed and got a shower and got dressed.
Yeah, right.
Celebrate that, right?
Celebrate it.
Celebrate the small things. If it's been hard for you to do something and you've now done different
Yes.
and you've
Mhm.
done better,
Yeah.
celebrate it.
Mhm.
Um, and just the other day, oh, I don't remember where it was or whatever, but I felt like I had done a really good job with my team on the job that I had.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want a daiquiri ice cream cone from Baskin Robbins. I love it. I
Mhm.
don't eat it very often, but it's my little
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna get
Mhm.
myself a treat.
Yeah.
And I had a 30-minute drive to go to another little work event, and I
Mhm.
stopped. I paid myself, I bought a cone. I paid the girl $1 for a tip because I was in such a good mood, and ate my little ice cream cone on my way on the trip.
Perfect.
And for me, it was just a little celebration. And
Yeah.
I remember the first time I thought to do that was when we had offices for Hopeful Hearts. It was our first offices, and
Mhm.
it was across the street from Baskin Robbins. And I was like, I
Mhm.
actually have a right to go do something, and I can actually celebrate myself if I'm going to do that.
Right.
I
I
mean, it
love
could be a
that.
bath for you. It could be, whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be an ice cream. It doesn't have to be food by all means, but
No.
any little thing that makes you happy. I think it's important
Mhm.
to take a note of that and recognize it and do it every now and
Yeah.
then. Or, like I said, if like my friend that, she got up, took a shower. I mean, her celebrating it was at letting me know, like, I'm
Yeah.
proud of myself. I got up and I took a shower today, and I did
Exactly.
something more. And that's
Mhm.
celebrating. That's letting somebody
Yeah.
else know.
I have a friend that has been in just a real funk lately, and um has really thrown herself into her business. She's a fairly new business, couple years old, and um hadn't been taking care of herself as well. And she sent me a message the other night, and it was like, okay, I exercised twice this week. I'm like, I'm so proud of you. Good for
That's
you.
good.
It's just
Yeah.
take the wins where you can get them as you're
Hmm.
healing, and you're on this path to recovery. Just take every win that you can and celebrate it, and find somebody around you who will celebrate with you or celebrate for you. It that makes all the difference, because there are people in
Hmm.
your life that if that friend had messaged some certain people and been like, I exercised twice this week, they'd be like, so, or why not 3 times, or next week do 4, or what. But just she just needed someone to say, I'm proud of you.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
all we need sometimes, just for someone to go, way to go. For
Hmm.
like for your friend to say, I'm so proud of you for getting up and taking a shower. That was a healthy choice that you made for you today. And that's
Hmm.
great.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And so I end with
mm.
be thankful, but the chapter is in regards to forgiveness. And,
Mhm.
when I was led to this, as God led me into writing, and I, even as I was writing, I was like, there's so much to be said about forgiveness, and in itself could be its own book. But the
Mhm.
reason why it's at the very last chapter is because to truly forgive and to
Mhm.
truly forgive yourself, you
Yeah.
do have to come through the process that this book walks you through in order to
Mhm.
fully acknowledge the pain that's been done and be able to say, I forgive. I put this in God's hands. I recognize that it is not my, like it's not to me, right?
Mhm.
It's between them and God. But
Yep.
I either forgive them or I forgive myself enough to then now move forward this
Yeah.
day and keep going and
Mhm.
keep moving
Yeah.
forward and thank God and celebrate and embrace the grace that he gives me, and the love that I have for myself. And
Mhm.
so that's the book in a nutshell, in a quick overview. And just so everybody knows, any of the books that I have that you find, there's only 3 of them out: Exposed, Redeemed, and Reclaimed. You can read Reclaimed all by itself, Exposed all by, Exposed and Redeemed are
Sure.
kind of, the Redeemed is the follow-up to Exposed.
Mhm.
So all those books, any proceeds go straight into Hopeful Hearts Ministry. So just keep that in mind as well, if you're interested. But I wanted to close this out in prayer, but did you have anything else that you
No,
wanted to say, Tamara?
no, no. Just again, if you have any questions about what we do with Hopeful Hearts Ministry, if you would like to support what we do, we're always looking for individuals or businesses who are willing to step up and support the work that we do. We are a 501c3, so any donation that you make is tax deductible. But we're looking for businesses to sponsor, like our upcoming retreat or
Mm-hmm.
our gala that's coming in February. You can reach
February
out.
9th.
Yes, reach out to us. Uh, at hopefulheartsministry.org. We have a contact page on there. You can find me or Shannon there, and or there's a donate page on there. We appreciate you prayerfully considering joining us in what we do and supporting us. Because when you reach out and when you help and make a donation, you are helping another person who has experienced trauma or abuse in their life. You are helping them find their voice. And no matter how much you give, however small or or large, it makes a difference in the life of someone. And so we appreciate you for doing that. So Shannon, close us in prayer.
Absolutely. I'm grateful for this prayer that Thomas Burton has written, but I believe, I mean, I resonate with it, or it resonates within me. I pray it resonates within you. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. In Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for
Thank you,
joining us
guys.
today. Blessings on your day.